topic of the impact of cryptocurrencies on the economy. So it should be quite an interesting discussion. Again, why don't we start off just by having everyone introduce themselves. We'll start from the left here.
Hi, my name is Niall Majuk. I currently live in Melbourne, Australia. I've been working in IT companies for the last 7-8 years. I was born in South Sudan. I've actually lived in 4 different countries in East Africa. So I've kind of get what is going on with Bitcoin. It took me about 2 weeks to just understand it. It took me a few minutes to actually realize if what they're saying is true, then it's going to be a massive impact.
My name's Idan Yago. I've lived in a number of countries, each with their own economic problems. I tend to somehow manage to move to countries just after they've become a problematic economic country. So recently I moved, like 4 years ago, I moved to the US. Also, interesting update, apparently, who's Parity Zero tweeting about me sitting in the wrong panel?
I'm Roger Veer, Bitcoin evangelist, been involved in Bitcoin since late 2010 and invested in a number of different Bitcoin startups. And if it wasn't for the jet lag, I would be even more excited to be here. But it's really exciting to see, just how many people around the world are excited about Bitcoin.
Hi there. For those of you who haven't met me, I'm Hugh Madden. I'm the CTO and co-founder of the Hong Kong exchange, Asia NextGen. It's not my first business. First, when I was 19, I set up an ISP of my own and then started doing security and software and networking for about 22 ISPs at the same time. And then I ran a Red Hat business and I sent my resources in as white labeled Red Hat resources, so a lot of Linuxy stuff. And then I started to doing risk and trading systems for the banks and did that for quite a long time. My last role was running HSBC's technology architecture for their multi-billion-dollar FX operation. And I've jumped across out of the corporate life and back into the startup scene again, and now we're doing Asia NextGen, which for those of you who don't know, spans renminbi, so we're operating in China and Western markets, and you should come and have a look at our sites and great arbitrage opportunities there. For some reason, people are throwing in so much money, well over the. I think we're selling at 440 earlier today. So people just haven't twigged about the arbitrage opportunity that we represent, but I'm quite sure that's going to change rapidly.
I'm Hakim Mamoni. I'm the co-founder of Seedcoin, and I'm also the founder of Dealcoin. My background is in also IT and banking, really. I've been working for over 10 years in a city in London for investment banks, and also got to work as a consultant for central banks around the world. I personally also have lived in several countries around the world. I'm very much of a nomad. And I find that Bitcoin is going to be an amazing revolution in terms of paradigm shifts in the world, but we're going to get back to that in a minute.
Hello again, my name is Zenon Kapran. I'm part of a Shanghai-based market research and advisory company covering topics in the financial industry, one of them being Bitcoin in China.
So thank you, everyone. I think that the topic discussion, in a way, presupposes the idea that cryptocurrencies will have an effect on the economy. So if we could just start with that idea, do you agree with the idea that it's going to actually make a change to the economics of a country or to the world? Start in the end. Yep.
So looking at this in the context of China, I think it could. I mean, some of the things that I talked about this morning and the reasons why it's kind of picking up in China in terms of the fact that it's a capital-controlled currency, it could certainly have a negative impact on the economy there and on some of the issues around taxes and currency conversion. Hugh mentioned the arbitrage opportunity as well. So I think from that, it could have an impact. I think for a place like China that is really into virtual currencies and buying things online and e-commerce, it could be rapidly adopted. How far in the future that will actually affect the economy itself, I'm not terribly sure.
Well, as far as the economy is concerned, I'd like for you guys to think for a minute about the situation that we've inherited. We live in a US dollar-based economy as far as international trade is concerned. And if you think about it for a second, you have to realize that when it comes to international payments, having a national currency being the basis of this where the authorities are able to inflate and deflate the monetary mass of the currency, is actually not providing a very stable environment for international trades. And so I definitely believe that cryptocurrencies and bitcoins can provide a great help to have a much more sustainable, a much more resilient economy where we don't have crazy boom and busts like the ones that we've experienced for, quite a long time now.
Yeah, I guess just to further that point, I think the reason that so many people, particularly highly educated professional people, are very interested in Bitcoin is because of the last decade, because of QE, because of the fact that instead of having all these variable floating currencies, we've had basically the entire economy hooked together with this backbone of managed currency rates, and that being China and the US, and all monetary policy being driven out of the States. And I think the economists themselves have all said, you know what, we probably were wrong. It wasn't actually perfect. Adam Smith didn't get it entirely right, and Adam Smith himself said this is just the start. There's a lot more work to be done here, and I think so many people are interested in Bitcoin because it takes back monetary policy. It takes back monetary policy from central planning, and it turns the world into a free market. And so it's going to have, if it doesn't get stomped on by those same authorities who are afraid of losing their most powerful economic tool, then it will significantly change the way the world operates. But I think this is in the backdrop where people are starting to realise that sovereigns are no longer sovereigns. Conglomerates span multiple countries. Conglomerates control a lot of policy in a lot of countries. And so the world economy isn't as simple as sovereigns anymore. It's a mixture of sovereigns and very large, powerful conglomerates. And yeah, so I guess in short, I think we're basically moving to a world monetary policy in some fashion.
I believe the question was, is Bitcoin going to have an impact on the world's economy? It would be absolutely impossible for it not to. Bitcoin, and I say this over and over again, but I say it because it's true, Bitcoin is the first time in the entire history of the world in which anybody, anywhere on the planet, can send and receive any amount of money, whether it's 1 penny or $1 million, with anyone else anywhere on the planet. And it's impossible for anyone to block them from sending or receiving that payment. And nothing like that has ever existed before in the entire history of humankind. There's no way that this couldn't possibly change the way the economy is going to work on the entire planet. It's going to change it for the better. I mean, think about it. Now people can send and receive any amount of money with anyone anywhere on the planet. It doesn't matter if it's midnight on Sunday when all the banks are closed. And they can do this right now, today, with Bitcoin. There's apps for smartphones. There's apps that people can control. There's Bitcoin wallets that people can control by SMS text messaging. So even people in countries that don't have developed economies where people have dumb phones that can only do text messaging, now those people have access to Bitcoin wallets as well. This is going to change absolutely everything for everybody on the entire planet. And wow, it's exciting. We have people here that flew in from all over the world to come to this conference in Singapore. There's another conference in another couple of weeks in Buenos Aires. This is just spreading across the planet like wildfire. This is going to change absolutely everything. I can't think of anything that would be more exciting for all of us to be a part of. This is literally history in the making right here, right now. So to answer the question, yes, it is going to change the economy. Hallelujah.
85% of the world don't have a bank account. 95% of the world don't have access to a credit card. Now, basically, it looks like banks are PCs run with Microsoft software. Africa doesn't need them, is going to leapfrog them. We'll use mobile phones. But that is just the beginning. Because if you go down to Latin America, or if you're in Africa, or huge parts of even developed countries like the United States of America, there are people who own property that is not registered anywhere. Just to use an example that I've encountered, in Honduras there are 2 different offices where all properties are registered, and the 2 registries don't match. So nobody owns anything. So if you can't mortgage your house, if you can't use collateral, your money is trapped, you can't use it to build a business. It is estimated that something between 17 and 20 trillion dollars in the emerging world and an additional 3 to 5 trillion dollars in the developed world are trapped in exactly that way. The blockchain, this is just one of the many creative ways in which we could use the blockchain, which has nothing to do with the currency, which could unleash economic forces which would be incredibly positive around the world.
I have to say I completely agree. I think John Maternis actually put it in a better way. He said Bitcoin is actually going to be really, really useful in economies that we have yet to see. So yes, it's definitely going to have a massive impact. And when you think of Africa, for someone like me who's actually lived there and moved around, you just imagine a continent of 1 billion people with 58 countries, 58 different currencies, a few imploding every so often with different inflation rates. And you're giving the power to these people to be able to save a portion of whatever they can actually save when they're afraid that they will lose the value of the currency, to be able to save it in a wild currency that they can then send or receive from someone else. So the impact is really going to be massive. I really, really hope it succeeds, because it will, in a lot of ways, free a lot of people. Because central banking is actually an organization at the moment that is led by thugs, that is benefiting thugs.
So getting on this theme of what will happen in the future, I'd like to kind of put us all in the reality distortion field. What is the most unusual or most forward-thinking way that you think that Bitcoin is going to be used in the future? Beyond payments, beyond transactions. So you spoke about a little bit earlier about the ways we're not thinking about using. We really haven't discussed the alternative ways that Bitcoin is being used. So I'd like to hear your ideas on how it's going to be used in the future.
If I knew, I would be building it. But like one of the things that I could see easily happening is I could see the blockchain killing that horrible, horrible, lecherous cancer on the internet called Facebook. Because we suddenly have a way in which now you can form an identity which you control. You have a way to identify yourself without having to use government identification. You can communicate securely. You can choose different levels of communication. So I'm waiting for some kid in a Harvard dorm room to build a decentralized Facebook, which operates on similar principles and isn't diaspora. Because, you know, diaspora essentially, the problem with, the internet's gone through a number of waves. And these waves tend to go from decentralization, which is countered by a reaction of centralization. And as we've moved into the cloud, we've become the serfs. The cloud has become this feudal zone where now nobody owns the property, but some serf lord, gets to let us use it if we play by their rules. The problem with diaspora, for example, is it basically forces everyone to form their own little Facebook, to build their own infrastructure. What's amazing about Bitcoin is how easy it is. So you have a distributed cloud which someone else runs for you. The geeks in this room are running for the rest of humanity. But non-technical people can go create themselves a wallet, and now they've got complete control of their identity. They've got complete control through encryption of their information. So I think there's massive opportunity here, and I just hate Facebook.
So one of the other things to realize about Bitcoin is that the Bitcoin blockchain is going to hold a whole lot more than just money. It can be used to hold all sorts of things. If you haven't read about colored coins already, read about colored coins. That's another just incredibly interesting thing that it's a little bit too complicated, and I'm a little bit too tired to describe it in detail, but Google colored coins and read about that. Another thing that I can't describe at the moment, and I think is really interesting, is a website that I believe is called proofofexistence.com. And basically you can take any sort of text document or financial contract or absolutely anything at all and prove that it exists at a certain date and time without having to reveal any of the contents of that document whatsoever. And that's recorded into the Bitcoin ledger right there for the entire world to be able to verify. And there's just all sorts of incredibly interesting business applications for things like that. Title insurance or title for real estate is just one of those particular applications, but I'm sure there's all sorts of other ones that probably kids sitting in dorm rooms around the country are going to think up with that. But take a look at that website that already exists right now. It's called proofofexistence.com, and that's another incredibly interesting example of how this Bitcoin blockchain technology is going to be able to be applied to all sorts of other just incredibly interesting and useful things for humanity that is more than just about money.
Well, I hope nobody minds, but I'm going to go a little bit sci-fi here, and this isn't next decade. But so everyone's probably heard of the Onion Ring, which is a way to pass around encrypted network packets and communicate, hopefully, or hopefully anonymously, but who knows. It won't be too long until someone writes a virtual machine version of that. So it doesn't just move packets around; it runs your code. So you'll write something, send it out into this very private, encrypted. No one knows what it's doing. Probably, maybe no one can even shut it down. So at that stage, you've got these autonomous, not sentient. At that stage, you've got these autonomous bots in code running out there on the internet. And these things need to earn a living. They need to pay for services, pay for their own existence. So eventually, these things will be using Bitcoin or something down the line to exist. And a long way down the line, then these things will be sentient. So there's sentient online beings paying and living for themselves with Bitcoin.
Well, if we fast forward a bit in the future, what I would love to see the blockchain being used is for democracy, for voting systems. Because, I mean, you guys may have heard of the voting system in America called Diebold's voting system, which is notoriously a black box. The code is not available and they don't want to release it. But what we also know about Diebold is that it's something that's easily hackable, which for a democracy is absolutely ridiculous. Now, as far as the blockchain is concerned, we could very easily see in the future a voting system that uses a type of blockchain to secure the votes so that it's impossible for anyone to actually hack the vote and change the outcome of what democracy should be. And for, in the future, hopefully a society that embraces direct democracy, this would be really the way to go, using the blockchain to secure the voting system.
Any questions from the audience? Yes.
Yeah, so I think that Bitcoin is amazing. The fact that two people anywhere in the world can send money to each other 24 hours a day is really great, like Roger said. Ideally, we would all want to see an economy that is only functioning on Bitcoin. There's just one problem, is that governments cannot function in that economy. So do you think they would let that happen? Without any resistance?
I'm going to rain on our techno-utopian party here for a little bit. In 1996, the internet was going to set us free because information wanted to be free, and nobody would know, there would be no more racism because in the internet nobody knows that you're a dog, and we would all have the same opportunities of education because we would all have access to the entire repository of human knowledge. And we got Snapchat. Not just Snapchat, we also got Wikipedia, but human society doesn't change in a binary fashion. So what's going to happen is we're going to go through growing pains, and government is going to adjust. And there's lots of ways that government could operate with Bitcoin. And there are lots of ways that our government could operate much, much better if it had Bitcoin, because there would be less temptation and less tools for government to abuse the powers it had. But abusing powers is fun. It's kind of the reason a lot of people go into power. And so we're going to have a struggle on our hands. And it's up to us to articulate to everyone why this technology is so important. And it's, to me, one of the most unfortunate things about Bitcoin is that it's called Bitcoin. And that we've been here an entire day and we've spent 99% of the time talking about money. Because money, in most people's imagination, is the root of all evil. And so the very fact that we're talking about a technology that is just based on money seems to indicate that it's all about greed or avarice or doing something wrong. But in actuality, what this technology does is it's allowed us to to coordinate between people. It's the way you share on the internet and the way you express value on the internet. And I think the better we get as a community at articulating that, and I don't think we're even close to that yet. We haven't been able to paint a picture of the amazing things, the sci-fi things that we could do. You know, these autonomous agents. Mike Hearn has been talking. Mike Hearn works for Google, and he's one of the key developers behind Bitcoin. And he's got fantastic ideas. But talking about autonomous robotic agents who don't belong to anyone and run their own businesses is a little bit of a dystopian vision for most people. But recently I heard a talk where he talked about how this will allow people to drive faster on the road, because if you need to go really fast, your self-driving car will automatically tell the self-driving car in front of it that it's willing to pay to drive ahead of it. Now that's a cool vision for most people, because most people can then easily envision themselves getting to work faster. So I think the more we can come up with visions like that and talk about visions like that and talk less about coins and stop calling all of our companies Coinbit or some variation thereof, I think the easier we will have, the easier our job will be in terms of getting adoption and getting people to enjoy the vision of this technology as we do.
Can you talk more about the taxation issue that will become a problem for all the governments?
Yeah, I think it's a very, very pertinent question. And I think in the old status quo, in the 90s, if this was happening, not a chance. There's no way in the world those sovereigns would give away that much monetary policy. It just wouldn't happen. Right now, it's a completely different part of history. The immense moral hazard that happens through this financial crisis, completely ludicrous, and I think a growing percentage of the population is educated to this fact and very disillusioned. And so if there's ever going to be a point in time when the masses are educated enough and have the ability to make some significant changes, I think that opportunity is just about upon us.
I think I would just like to say in regards to that, there are, to begin with, some already dysfunctional governments that are actually looking after themselves rather than the people. So a system like this forces them to be a bit more honest, to actually deliver something that makes people want to give rather than giving them no choice. So I think that's part of the benefit of Bitcoin. Yes, there will be trouble picking up taxes, but in any community, if you want something to happen, there's no issue with donation. I mean, we do help people who are in trouble around the world, whether it's because of natural disasters or other things. I don't see any reason why any group of people cannot say, all right, we have elected this many people and they should be doing X, Y, Z. We're willing to contribute this much. And there will be a level of transparency and a level of commitment because you're giving as per your expectations of what you want to receive.
Just quickly about the tax issue. Taxing Bitcoin is not going to be that problematic. Government was using taxes long before Visa cards and sophisticated checking existed. They managed to check, they managed to track and tax cash. And Bitcoin in that respect is equivalent. The government will find a way.
I think one of the biggest short-term benefits that we're going to see is that most countries around the world today are paying for all these things that they're doing through inflation. And if the world starts using Bitcoin, that strips that tool away from all these governments around the world. I was born in the United States. The United States government loves to inflate their currency. And unfortunately, most of the money that they're just printing up, in addition to giving it to a bunch of giant corporations, they're also using it to bomb people around the world. And philosophically, I want absolutely nothing to do with that at all. And for me personally, that's my strongest motivation to be involved in Bitcoin, is because it strips government's ability to just print money at will and then use it to kill people around the world. So in the short term, I think that's one of the biggest benefits we have from Bitcoin. And I understand that this is a Bitcoin conference, but if we can change it to a philosophical side for just a moment, I think it's important for people to ask themselves a couple of key questions in regards to government. And the question is, can an individual delegate a right that they do not possess to somebody else. And I think pretty clearly that you can't delegate a right that you don't have yourself to somebody else. And then the next question is, well, can a group of people delegate rights that none of them have individually to another entity? And it should be pretty clear that if you don't have the right individually and none of the people of that group have that right, you can't delegate a right that none of you guys have. And so then the next question is, where does government get its authority from? And I think it's important to think about that sort of thing. And I'll let you guys think about that.
Well, I will second that actually, because we need to remember, as far as people living in democracies are concerned, the government is supposed to be working for them. It's not that the government controls us. The government is supposed to answer back to us. They work for us. So if the government doesn't do that, maybe there's a need for other people to step in and maybe introduce some new political parties that will respect the will of the people, because that's really what democracies are supposed to be about. And if they want to stop Bitcoin, and most of the people in the nation want Bitcoin, maybe they need to demand it as well.
But in practice, governments just do whatever they want. And
That's why I want direct democracy.
I'm not interested in participating in that.
I have a question to the panel. I completely agree, and I'm sure everyone here agrees that Bitcoin has the chance to truly transform the economy and the world, the future. But I want the panel to go completely doomsday and tell what is your greatest nightmare scenario? What is your greatest fear? What is the greatest risk as you perceive it to this rosy vision of the future that we all have?
I guess fear for the future of the world's economy, or I guess what you really mean is fear for the Bitcoin
For
itself.
Bitcoin.
Well, I think it's clearly even more than regulatory concerns. It's a death stroke, technical or cryptographic bug in the protocol that renders it worthless and useless overnight. And that is possible. We've got to be honest about it. It can happen, and one day it may happen.
I'm mainly worried about one thing, and I spoke about it a little bit in my talk. The fact that every single transaction is tracked, and is also tracked to a cryptographically signed identity, is very scary in my mind. Because the potential exists. It wouldn't be trivial, but the potential certainly exists to force companies to KYC everyone, to start tracking everyone's transactions. And once you do that, if you have a government leak, and government leaks we've noticed happen, right? You suddenly have everybody's transactions not only exposed to the NSA, which is bad enough, but exposed to everyone. And there is nothing more intimate. I would prefer to get naked in front of the audience than reveal my bank account. There is nothing more intimate than the way in which I choose to spend my money, because that is my expression of how I'm living my life, who I care for, and what I most fear about. What I'm most fearful of. So to my mind, the fact that we have now exposed all of that, and there's the potential danger to track all of our activity in that way, is very scary.
I'm very interested in knowing, today there was a lot of talk about using Bitcoin as an investment tool for fiat currencies. I didn't see a single person here selling any items for Bitcoin today. I heard one person speaking who produces something that they sell for Bitcoin, and that was Bitcoin miners. And yet I hear that an important part of Bitcoin growing and adoption is getting people to use it. And for me, that's people using it as a global currency to buy and sell actual products. Oh, good. All right.
And I can address that too.
With this in mind, what can be done to get more people to buy and sell real products in Bitcoin? We saw the Silk Road got shut down. There was a great example of an awesome free market in products. eBay isn't allowing people to use Bitcoin yet. BitMit, which is about the only equivalent, is closing down. What can be done to increase adoption that way? Because I think that would be helpful.
I would like to answer that. So one thing that I heard on the last panel, people talking about, like, did your investors pay you with Bitcoin for your investment? And then the Winklevoss in some YouTube video I saw recently said, oh, we did the math. If we had paid in Bitcoin, we would have lost $1 million because the Bitcoin price went up. No, you wouldn't have. You paid with dollars. You could have spent those same dollars that you paid the company with to buy Bitcoins and then give them the Bitcoins. Or if you're having a startup and you're about to accept, venture money, if you receive the money in dollars from the VC firm, go out and spend the dollars on Bitcoins. Then hold most of your assets in Bitcoins. You shouldn't be starting a Bitcoin startup if you don't believe in Bitcoin. And if you believe in Bitcoin, you should be holding most of your net worth for the company in Bitcoin. And as far as selling goods, anytime you want to buy anything from anybody, ask them, do you accept Bitcoin? About a half an hour ago, I made a hotel reservation for Beijing tomorrow night. In the little comments form, as I'm making the reservation with my dirty credit card, I put, I would like to pay next time in Bitcoin. Please accept Bitcoin in the future. And just anytime you buy anything from anyone, anywhere, ask them to accept Bitcoin. And if the first time they hear it, maybe they'll think, oh, what is that? Some weird guy's coming and wants to pay with magic internet money. But if they hear it a couple of times, they're going to start to pay attention, and more people are going to start to use it. And just, don't be rude about it. Just gently, constantly remind people, hey, I would like to buy this in Bitcoin. And especially if you're a repeat customer at a business or a restaurant somewhere, and they know you a little bit, they know that you're not some weirdo, they're going to start accepting it. It's really the truth. And if you're friends with the owner, help them a little bit, or put an ad on your local Craigslist and say, I will help your business accept Bitcoin. And if somebody contacts you, help them get set up to accept Bitcoin. And there's all sorts of great tools that make it easy for people to do that now. And the honest fact of the matter is, yeah, the media loves reporting on, Silk Road and crazy things that people are doing with Bitcoin. I've been paying vendors that in mainland China that produce electronic parts for over 2 years now. I've been paying them in Bitcoin. And it's not exciting. It doesn't make the newspapers because I'm buying little computer parts with Bitcoin. But and then some of those factories that I'm paying in Bitcoin, they're paying their vendors in Bitcoin. So there's a huge economy where people are paying people in Bitcoin, but it's just not exciting enough to make it, to the front page of Reddit or whatever, the news sources that normal people use that aren't obsessed with Bitcoin. But anytime you have the opportunity to buy anything, ask the vendor to accept Bitcoin, and more vendors will start doing that. So I think that's the strategy, is just anytime you want to buy anything, ask the company to accept Bitcoin as payment. And anytime you owe your friend or somebody else some money, offer to pay them in Bitcoin, and just spread the word that way. And more people are going to start to use it. And for whatever reason, when the price starts to go up, more people seem to be receptive to that message. So right now is a really good time to start offering people to pay them in Bitcoin. And you can gently remind them too, hey, remember last month when I asked you to pay you in Bitcoin? If I had paid you and you used to have those Bitcoins, now it would be worth this much more. And that really catches people's attention as well.
So one of my guilty pleasures is every kind of Wednesday, Thursday night, there's a noodle shop around the corner from my place in Shanghai where I buy a bottle or a bowl of beef noodles. And so I think when I go back to Shanghai, I'm going to ask them to start accepting Bitcoin for my $2 noodles, and we'll see how quickly they pick it up. The flip side, I think, of this conversation is the regulation, in my mind, of the people that I talk to. I mean, specifically in Shanghai. So the analysts on our team that were covering this for the first time, and other peers, even within the banking industry, one of the key questions that they asked before they got involved is, okay, what do the regulators think about this? And I think that having a little bit of clarity about what the regulations is going to be will help acceptance as well, in my mind, at least, especially in China, where there's been issues in the past about the currency and things being taken away that we covered this morning.
The Bitcoin slogan is vires in numeris, which is Latin for strength in numbers. And of course that has a double meaning, strength in cryptographic numbers, but also strength in a lot of people doing something. And there's a couple of communities, for example, the Kreuzberg district in Berlin and Vancouver, that are really using this and pushing vendors to accept Bitcoin. There's parts of that section of Berlin where you can buy virtually everything, restaurants, haircuts, whatever, with Bitcoin. And my friends in Vancouver are using this strategy. They will go as a group of 10 or 20 people to a restaurant, and they say, all of us here are going to eat here tonight if you accept Bitcoin. And they have technical guys on their team that can show the guy immediately how to do that. And a lot of the restaurants are doing it, coffee shops, restaurants, and so on. And then what they do is, if that restaurant has accepted it, they will tell everybody else, go and patronize that restaurant. So that restaurant gets repeat business from it. It's working really well, and Vancouver is becoming a real hub for Bitcoin.
I think that's exactly right. What you need is enough of a user base for it to make sense for the merchants. What happened with the internet is one of the things that popularized it was something, you need something which is really mainstream. And nothing is more mainstream than porn. So we are really lucky that porn has really high chargeback rates, between 30 to 40% for many porn sites. And so they're starting to introduce acceptance of Bitcoin on many sites, and in fact providing a discount. So speaking of guilty pleasures, next time you're using porn, I would suggest that A, you pay for it, and B, ask them if they'll accept Bitcoin. That's why it's anonymous currency.
I agree with all these points, but I just had one small rebuttal, Roger, and that believing in Bitcoin does absolutely not mean you believe in price rises. Actually, it should be exactly the opposite. Eventually, we don't even want price rises. I think it's quite inevitable that it will happen for some time as adoption occurs. And for that reason, I'm a strong supporter of altcoins eventually as well. Because yes, Bitcoin is a deflationary currency, but you can branch the code base, and slowly other coins can also gain some traction. And I'm a big believer in that. So we don't want constant price rises. And being a believer in Bitcoin doesn't mean you believe in the price.
Okay, I've got just earlier, based on what Eden says about the anonymity of Bitcoin and the possibility of it being tracked, you see, it's not as anonymous as we think it is. Okay, so in 1988, during Ronald Reagan's era, okay, I'm going to go all gloom and doom as we have opened up the floor to be. All right, in 1988, during Reagan's era, in the Economist magazine, the front page, it was published that they were talking about the possibility of a global currency, the precursor, which is a 30-year plan to implement a global currency and what the possibilities are. So there was a discussion between the US Treasury and the Federal Reserve and Ronald Reagan and so forth and so on. And there is depicted this picture of a phoenix holding onto a coin, and the feet of the phoenix is crushing all other major world currencies. Okay, and it's depicted on that coin itself, the date 2018. Okay, if you don't believe me, look it up on the internet, Google it up if you have access to the internet. It is in 1988. I don't know which month though. Okay, my question is, with what's going on with Bitcoin, as much as I'm a supporter of it, and having said that, perhaps the NSA or any other authorities out there might be tracking us or, you know, manipulating it. We might not possibly know. Okay, so what are possibilities that it may end up being, that global currency that the Feds, the treasuries all have been talking about? And secondly, with that in mind, would that be necessarily be a good thing? So this question is specifically thrown to Aidan first, and to the rest of the panel later.
This is the same government that claimed that, this is the government that had the largest amount of nuclear weapons in the world. And then when they attacked Iraq, they couldn't even figure out how to smuggle one in order to prove that they had nuclear weapons. This is my problem with conspiracy theories, right? Government incompetence kind of precludes their ability to really have 30-year plans, not to mention the fact that the senators have 2-year terms. So if indeed Bitcoin does become a global currency by 2018, it will simply be the internet's way of telling us that it has a sense of irony.
I just want to say that I think that Bitcoin actually is a benefit for the banking industry and the governments, and I think that they will come to realise that at some point. It's not something that they will try to attack. They'll actually embrace it. Bitcoin, the governments and banks are made up of individuals, and Bitcoin benefits everyone on the planet, even people who might benefit from the short term. You know, the guy who gets to print the money and he might be benefiting from free money at the moment. even that guy will benefit from the prosperity that humanity will gain from Bitcoin. So sooner or later, people are going to realize that, all individuals will, and everyone's going to cooperate to make this work. And I don't think that it's going to be a doom and gloom scenario necessarily at all. And the other thing I wanted to say was that, a question I had was that, regarding the protocol going forward, are there any features of the protocol that people have, that you think would be good to adopt, or changes that you would like to see in the protocol?
Okay, that'll be the last question. Thank you.
Some of the things that I'm the most interested in are the protocols that will sit on top of the Bitcoin protocol. So colored coins, like I mentioned before, is one that's real interesting. I'm sure there's a number of others that people are working on, and they're going to do things that we probably haven't even imagined yet. And Bitcoin is just the base that's going to allow all those to be built on top of it. So that's really, really interesting in my book.
Mine's a bit more boring, really, just more of an operational thing. Not everyone knows that the blockchain, the blocks are actually size limited at the moment, and so there's a limit to how many transactions you can put in each block. And what that means is there's a limit to how many transactions a second the network can actually support. So for it to really, really scale properly, like we need it to, there's going to have to be some new releases which alleviate that problem for a much bigger block, so we can handle the necessary volumes. But the devs are well aware of it and working hard on that, but that's one of them.
Well, something a bit more simple that I would like to see coming up is for wallets to provide the dead man switch feature. Do you know what the dead man switch feature is? It's the ability, if you were to die, to have your fund transferred directly to next of kin, so that you wouldn't lose your Bitcoins. That would be great.
Okay, so I'd like to thank everyone on the panel for taking the time to speak. Thank you very much. And I think we should give a round of applause to Seedcoin for organizing the event tonight.